Hello again. I'm John. This is Tanya. This is our week 2 of our mental health fitness resource. And last week we talked through some mental health strategies. So we talked about journaling, about looking after ourselves physically, and about our social network. They're very important. And today we are going to talk about something a little bit more specific. Okay, so this week we're talking about self-awareness, being self-aware. Now, we're going to come at this from a bit of a different angle, so bear with us here, because first thing I really want to talk about actually is grief. Now, this year, many people have been through, have had loss in their life. That may have been loss of somebody they loved, but it may be loss of a job. It may be loss of freedom, in lockdown. But we've all experienced an element of loss this year. So we're going to talk about something called the Kubler-Ross
Cycle.
model. I really try and hard with this talk. This is Tanya's area. So Kubler-Ross, tell us about Kubler-Ross, Tanya, please.
According to the KublerRoss Cycle or the KublerRoss model, we go through stages when we experience a death or a loss, like John's just mentioned. And after the initial shock of the loss or the death, we'll experience denial, where we will ignore what's just happened and we're in disbelief. And then we'll have anger, where we're just raging about what's just happened. And then we go through bargaining. And bargaining, you can see right now happening with the government restrictions, where we can only have, before lockdown, we can only have 6 people in our house. Now, if you're going through the bargaining stage of the Kubler-Ross cycle, you'll start to convince yourself that one extra person's okay. It's not going to make much difference. And that's bargaining. And then you'll experience depression, where you just feel like everything's just hopeless. It's never going to get better. And then till finally acceptance. But the thing about the Kubler-Ross cycle is you don't go through the stages chronologically or step by step. You can go to, say, bargaining and then back to denial. And then you could go through anger for a long while, and then you might feel depressed, and then you go back to denial until you get to acceptance. And even then, years later, something might trigger a memory of the death or the loss, and then you go through the cycle again, where you're denial or you're angry about the situation, or you might feel depressed, until eventually you get acceptance and it sticks. So it's a bit like a roller coaster, where you go up and down, round and round, and
a very complex roller coaster, that, and jumping back and forth. I wouldn't like to go on that, but the reality is it's not much of a cycle, is it?
no.
They really need to think about renaming now. So, but the thing is, actually, I mean, you've told us what happens to us through this, and I see that maybe in the Bible, if we were to talk about Job, within that whole book and the discussion with friends and with God, you will see all those different aspects Job goes through or has experience of. And right, so we know that, but how does that help us?
Well, when you know why you behave the way you behave and how you feel and what you're thinking, then you have knowledge, and knowledge is power. So that information informs you of, that's why I do this. And then when you know why, you're able to manage your behaviour and control yourself in these situations. You become more self-aware. So that knowledge is being self-aware.
And also, I suspect, that actually, if we know somebody, if we're not going through something like this ourselves, but we know somebody who's going through that, and being able to see why a person is acting a certain way is incredibly helpful. It's a bit comforting, actually, because, being aware where somebody's at, they're not just being angry because they're angry all the time. It's because I can see how they're grieving. I can see why they're bargaining. I can see that going. So it's a help for those looking into a situation as well as those in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. So being self-aware, this is the point. And of course, the greatest self-aware person we know, well, one of the greatest self-aware people we know, and one of my favourites in the Bible, is again that man David, Mr. mentally healthy what did we call him?
Emotionally intelligent.
Mr. Emotionally Intelligent David. Next week I'll have that. Mr. Emotionally Intelligent David. Through the Psalms, we get that again and again. He is saying, this is how I feel. I'm laying it on the plate. I'm stomping my feet. I'm expressing myself. And that's really good. And that's, I think we talked about that as well through journaling. That's a great way of really as well helping you to become self-aware. So, but I know, this is reality, is that David wasn't perfect. And there was a point in David's life where really he did something where he didn't express where he was at or what he was doing. And that's when he committed adultery with Bathsheba. And he tried to hide that. He tried to keep it a secret. And he hid it inside of himself. But then the prophet Nathan came to him and said to him, David, there was this bloke and he did this thing and he hid it from everyone and it was really bad. And David got really angry about it. He said, this guy, we've got to pull him apart. We've got to take him. I'm going to punish him. He's really, really bad. And then Nathan turns around and he says, talking about you, David. Now, you know, this is an area that I know we've talked about in the past and you have a special insight into, and that's something called the shadow.
Yeah. So essentially what David has done there, he has denied a part of himself that he didn't like. And then when he hears about it in someone else or sees it in someone else, it's triggered that shadow. And we all have shadows, and it's called a shadow because it's hidden, it's behind us. We deny it, repress it, or ignore it. And a good way to see what your shadow is think about somebody that irritates you or annoys you. And then what is it about that person that you don't like? What is it about their behaviour that really just irritates you? And look into yourself and think, is that something that I do? Because more than likely it is, and that would be your shadow. And the thing about also doing that is you're illuminating what your shadows are, so that when you start to see something that you're hiding in yourself, you can then manage it, you can control it, so it doesn't control you anymore.
We're not controlling you, that's the thing. What's in the shadows, what's in darkness can end up controlling us, and we're a whole people about bringing stuff out into the light, because then it doesn't have that power over us. And notice that's the thing is in that story with David is Nathan was prompted by God to go to David and say, you know, this is what happened. And it, you know, God, the Holy Spirit, can work in us to illuminate those shadows in our lives. So I mean, part of our suggestions for what to do this week is that asking the Holy Spirit, what is it in my life which I'm keeping hidden, which I'm not dealing with? And it's so important. And also our response to that, if you then read Psalm 51, is David then, he really does get in completely touch with himself and he lets that all out. And part of that is, within that, is about forgiveness, acceptance. You know, David says in there, he says, you know, I've sinned. He doesn't make an excuse for it. He accepts what he's done and he moves forward with it. And I think that's so important. And then from that, me and you were talking.
We talk a lot.
We do, we talk a lot. And one of the tools we want to give you this week is a bit of a...
modified. So it's something called loving kindness meditation. And we've modified it to fit what we're doing. And so we're going to call it loving kindness prayer. And the premise of it is you find yourself a quiet place and you pray this and you say this. And that is, may I have peace, may I have joy, may I have happiness. And then you think about somebody that you love or somebody that annoys you and you say, may you have peace, may you have joy, may you have happiness. And then you think of a wider group, so maybe the church or people at work, or just an example of something where there's lots of people, like a conflict maybe, and you say, may they have peace, may they have joy, may they have happiness. And that essentially is the loving kindness prayer.
Yeah, and one of the big areas we talked about that with as well is bringing that into that, using that prayer as a form of forgiveness.
Yeah.
So it's, may I forgive myself? May I forgive that person who's done harm to me? May I forgive that bigger situation, which is, for instance, could be seen in the terms of the pandemic. You know, so it's that starting small. It starts with ourselves, being aware of who we are, being aware of maybe what others have done to us, and then moving to how maybe we feel the world and the environment affects us. So now we move on to the wonderful world of questions for this week, which we have in place. Now, unfortunately this week what happened is Tanya wrote them down, so she's going to be able to read them a little bit better than I. But I'm going to start us off here. So question number 1 for this week is, how in touch are you with your emotions? This is self-awareness this week, so this is about being honest about yourself. And then to follow that up, what emotions do you need to express? Now, this is very important in terms of what we were saying there about what's hidden. If there's anger, if there's
hurt, or even fear, if you've got those sort of emotions, what do you need to express them? And if so, write it down in your journal.
Yeah, or share it with the group you're with.
Or
share it with somebody who's close to you can trust.
Even in prayer as well.
That's good. So, next question.
What might stop you from taking responsibility of your behaviour?
Oh, toughie. This as well, this can come back to like David. David, he did. He went through this, he committed adultery. And this came out into the light. But David's response in Psalm 51, this is, as a group, as an individual now, I suggest you is to read Psalm 51. Because this is David's response to, it's him taking responsibility. It's him saying, I know what I've done. And it's really important. So that's that question.
And if you feel the need to rescue somebody in the group or even in life, what is it triggering in you? So what emotions or thoughts have been brought up in yourself when you feel the need to rescue someone else?
We talked about that last week. Remember, rescuing people. Yeah. People need to allow this, their feelings to come out. People need to allow that healing to happen. What is it that triggers in you that you feel you need to respond to? And then lastly, this is another area which we maybe need to look at prayerfully and in meditation. And that is what unresolved unforgiveness in yourself or with others. What is there that you have unresolved? And take time with this. It's important to really give yourself time to go through this. Give yourself time to become aware of what's going on in yourself and in your life, and then you respond out of this. And what a suggestion I'd give, especially if you're doing this as a group, is we're looking at peace, quiet. Give this time to settle in. Give this time. Meditation is a biblical concept. Read Psalm 119. It's a very long psalm for a reason. There's an awful lot of meditation in there. And the reason for that is, yes, meditation takes time. So please sit with each other, take time with each other. When you feel the need to speak, pause. Just stop yourself and think, do I need to respond now? Can it wait? Maybe count to 30. Give yourself time, people. And then respond out of this. Thanks for your time again. And we will hopefully see you. Or you'll see us. Keep on saying we'll see you. We won't see you. We can't do that. You can see us again soon.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.